everybody, I'm Paulie G. Welcome back to the Paulie G Show, coming to you live from high atop Mount Georgia. I hope you're doing well. Today we're here to talk about Dobros. So, people sometimes ask me, Paulie G, do you have a Dobro? And I say, yeah, I have a Dobro. And their next question is usually, well, what brand is it? Is it a National? Is it a Resophonic? Is it a Gretsch? No. It's a Dobro Dobro. Yes, there is a brand called Dobro. At least there was, and this is one of them. So, a little bit of history. Right around 100 years ago from today, guitars were of the acoustic variety, and they were struggling with volume to compete with other instruments like violins, banjos, horns, other instruments of the day, because of course these were the days before amplification of instruments, at least as we know it now. So inventors were looking for ways to make guitars louder so they could fit into the mix of other instruments. And the Dobro brothers came over here, immigrated from Europe, wound up in Southern California, and were inventors who worked on this type of design along with a man named George Beecham, and also I think one of the Rickenbacker family members was involved. And they created a steel-bodied guitar with what we call a resonator cone or speaker. So the design here, the idea was to try to get more projection out of the guitar, and what they came up with was a bridge underneath this cover here, which is connected mechanically to a cone, very much like a modern day speaker, if you will, which was designed to project out more volume out of the guitar. So it worked very well, and these were quite popular, and they started to produce these mainly made out of steel, hence the term steel guitar. But with the advent of World War II, steel was a very difficult material to come by. In fact, most of it, by law, was dedicated to support the war effort. So inventors had to come up with other types of alloys and materials to use. This one, for example, is made out of sort of a brass copper alloy. It's chrome plated, which makes it look very much like a steel guitar. So people still very often refer to these as steel guitars. It's very, very heavy, by the way, as a result of that. But anyway, the National Guitar Company sold these very successfully for a number of years. At a certain point, there was a falling out between the Dobro brothers and other members of the board of National, and they left the company and started their own brand, Dobro, and that's where the term Dobro came from. So the first part of the name is Dobro Brothers, and then the bro is, of course, reference to the brothers. So they were in direct competition for a number of years with National to make these types of guitars. And they were very popular for Hawaiian type music with slide. There's versions that are more known as Hawaiian guitars where these have a very thick square shaped neck and are meant to be played under lap with a steel, slide. And then there's also wooden versions of these with a resonator plate. Those are more often referred to as resonator guitars, but these names become interchangeable. National guitars, steel guitars, Dobros, it's sort of like a Band-Aid. If you cut your finger, you say to someone, give me a Band-Aid. Well, they're going to hand you a bandage, but it might not be a Band-Aid bandage, but these names become interchangeable. So Dobro stayed in business throughout the 30s or the 40s and 50s. Around the time that electric guitars came along, around 1950, when Leo Fender came out with the Telecaster, and of course Gibson and Les Paul created their amazing creations for electric guitars, the amplifiers. These things fell out of favor for the most part, but they maintained a certain level of success. And then Gibson bought the Dobro company in 1993, And interestingly, they didn't move the company to Nashville or do any of the normal things that they did when they bought guitar companies, but rather they just sort of let them operate autonomously. They had a little niche market. They kept their manufacturing in Huntington Beach, California, until I believe it's 2001, when sales were really waning. The company was probably losing money, I don't know. But Gibson dissolved the Dobro brand completely and said, well, gee, we have factories in China. We can make these things a lot cheaper. We'll market them under the Epiphone brand and sort of do away with this Dobro brand. And that's exactly what they did. So this is one of the last of the Mohegans, so to speak. This one was actually built in 1996. So it's a lucky find. These are becoming increasingly rare to locate because of just the small amount that were made, and people tend to buy them and keep them. They don't really sell them. So there's not a big market for these, or a big availability. So, but anyway, that's kind of the story behind Dobros, and this is one I've had for a number of years now. They're not really widely known in popular music. I can only think of a couple of examples that I'm aware of where they were used in sort of a rock music setting, if you will. The first time I ever heard one, I was a very young kid. My brother had a Johnny Winter album titled Still Alive and Well. Probably came out in 71, 72, somewhere around there. And there was a song called Too Much Seconal. Johnny was playing one of these with a slide, and it sounded amazing. I had no idea what it was, but I thought, wow, that's an amazing sound. That was the first time I ever heard a steel guitar or dobro. The next time would have been just a number of years later, a short number of years later, on a Dire Straits album. Mark Knopfler used a dobro on the chord progression for Romeo and Juliet. So check that out if you ever have a chance. That's a really interesting chord progression that he's playing on a dobro. And I assume it was a national. I'm pretty sure he always plays national guitars. But that was another time where I had no idea what it was, but I just loved the sound of it. So it was only years later that I discovered what it was they were playing. But these are fun guitars to have. They usually have a lot of interesting designs on them. They chrome plate these, as I said earlier. And then what they typically do is they'll take a stencil or a template and then sandblast patterns and designs like palm trees and things over the chrome. So they look amazing. They're really fun to look at, and they're fun to play. Again, kind of limited applications. I do a lot of slide playing on it. Typically, you want to keep the action on them really high, open tuning, but you could play it like a normal guitar. They're fun to play that way as well. But that's what I typically do. I've got it in open G right now, but I've used it in a number of tunings on recordings and things. So anyway, that's all. Just kind of wanted to talk a little bit about Dobro guitars. And anyway, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time. And until then, this is Paulie G reminding you that when it comes to guitars, you only need one. More. See you next time.